I'm excited to see that some car brands are bringing back actual car names. They're moving away from this alphabet soup of letters or numbers to indicate their different models. I miss car names, and this has largely been a crime of the luxury brands. So I read an article today, super interesting. I want to talk about it, and then you get to hear my personal thoughts on what I think of how cars are named right now. So stay tuned. I appreciate you being here. If you've not been to my channel before, please click that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. But we talk about all cars all the time. I will say up front, I am not a mechanic. I'm not an auto executive. I'm just a fan who likes to read and think about cars all the time. And I've been frustrated by this move for decades now to cars being named some mix of letters and numbers. Back in the old days, you had names like Dorado, Dynasty, Continential, right? Names that really evoked something in you, even if in some cases they were more aspirational than the cars actually were. But sometime in, I guess, the 80s, brands really started to double down on letter and number combinations. Certainly you think of BMW, the 2002 became the 3 Series. Mercedes ended up with the CE and S classes. Lexus came out with ES and LS. Acura came out with actual names. And for some reason, manufacturers started to think that the mix of letters and numbers made sense. And initially, it kind of did. Like, you want to buy a BMW and there's a 330i. Well, that was a 3 Series, so you knew the size. 30 was the 3-liter engine, and I meant fuel injected. Easy to read. Hey, if they put an XI, it had all-wheel drive. It's easy to understand, but as these brands have expanded their models and expanded their options, the numbers have become completely meaningless now. Some of them have held to it relatively well. Lexus with the LS and the ES, for example. Acura ended up abandoning it, and it's kind of famous that they came out with their cars, but people associated with the car, not with the brand. You know, I drive an Integra. I drive a Legend. Not, I drive an Acura. And manufacturers started moving that way. Certainly the American luxury manufacturers were the most guilty of this sin. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due here, that the mainstream brands for GM and Ford and even Chrysler stayed pretty true to naming. The Malibu and the Cruze, the Acadia, you know, they've got names behind it. Certainly the trucks, they've got some, you know, number letter combinations in there, but that's also historic. I remember the day that it connected in my brain that Ford named their trucks, their SUVs starting with the letter E and their cars starting with the letter F. For example, the Fusion, the Focus, the Fiesta, the Escape, the EcoSport. What's the other one that's bigger than that? I don't remember. The point is, that's brilliant to me. I can now say the Fusion, I know it's a car. Ford Fusion, I know it's a Ford and it's a car. And then I just have to know where things rank in there. Now, there are some manufacturers that have always used numbers and sometimes names. I specifically think of Mazda. The Navajo, for example, was one of their SUVs. And they had the 323, the 626, the 929. They came out with the Amati. But even there, it wasn't quite real names for SUVs and trucks and numbers for cars, because the Amati was a car. But they did shorten it down, 323 to the 3. The 626 became the Mazda 6. Then, you know, I'm not sure some of that was not simplicity in marketing, but also being able to save 1 penny when they put the 6 on the back of the car, not a 626. But through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, you saw the luxury brands, other than the Germans becoming more of just a kaleidoscope of letters and numbers, but the American brands began to do it too. Of course, Cadillac has got the XT, like the XT4, for example, but then they still name the Escalade. Lincoln was the biggest sinner here, if you will. Their naming system just ended up being complex. They had the MKC, the MKZ, the MKX. Everything was an MK, it felt like, and it's still complicated to me. And I follow the industry, what everything was and what it was based on and where it laid. I just couldn't figure it out. Luckily, I also think Lincoln is leading the way in going back to those evocative names. And that's where this article came from. I actually saw this over here on Car and Driver. Lincoln is bringing back the Zehpyr. Now, the MKZ was shortened from Zehpyr, and this car looks fantastic. They don't know if it's a midsize or if it's coming out to replace the Continental, but it's going to be in China only because Americans just aren't buying cars right now. But it looks fantastic, but it really touched me, and I wanted to talk about it today. I wanted to get your feedback on it too in the comments. Those names mean something, right? You know, you're talking to somebody and you say, you know, I drive an Dorado versus I drive an ILX. You know, which one is more evocative to you? And Lincoln, I think they're absolutely on a tear right now. I should probably do a whole video about Lincoln because their cars are fantastic. Their vehicles, their SUVs are fantastic right now. Their interiors are beautiful. And they've gone back to a really good naming system. I love the nautical approach that they're using right now. You know, the Nautilus, the Corsair. You know, you still have to remember where they fall, but dang, I like what they're doing. They've got the Continental, it's being dropped away. The MKZ is being dropped in. I want them to continue it. I hope Cadillac catches this. They've got so many great names in the past. It doesn't appear they're going to with the move to EV only for Cadillac, but man, they've got some great names in the past. The Seville, things like that, that really could mean something in the future. And I did a video about if I ran Cadillac, and a lot of the comments were that Cadillac's been down for so long. It's been an okay manufacturer with reliability problems, and it doesn't have that specialness among buyers that remember when Cadillac was the bomb. And I think naming might be able to help them with that, help them strengthen that. So we'll see what they do. I'd love to know your thoughts below. I'd appreciate a like on the video. It really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. But I'm kind of excited. I don't think Lexus, Mercedes, and BMW will go back to it. Audi, I forgot about them as well. But I love that the American manufacturers are doing it because I do think it creates a little bit more specialness to them. One final thought. I say this as somebody who follows the industry, reads about it, and thinks about cars. Oh, if I won the lottery, I'd buy this and this, or would I buy this? And if I had a choice between these two, what would I buy? I don't think most people care. I really don't. I think most people are like, oh, my friend has an Acura and I kind of liked it and it seems to be really reliable. And I read some reviews and I don't care what it's called. TLX? Sure. Nobody cares, right? They just want to know that it has what they want for the price they want. I know there's a lot of us out here that do care, but I don't think anybody else really does. But from a marketing standpoint, I think names bring value. And names are something that people can latch on to. I have talked to many people who are like, oh, I drive a BMW. What kind? I think it's a 3 Series. One of my most memorable was somebody who drove a Mustang. I asked what engine they had in it, and they said they thought they had a 2-liter. I was like, that's not possible. That's not possible. And we had gone out to the parking lot after work. This was many, many years ago. And she was like, look, it's 2. It's got a 2 on the trunk. I'm like, that's a 5. It's a 5.0. You have a V8 Mustang GT. So Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I'd love your thoughts. Appreciate you listening to me. Have a great night.